Right now, though, we need to speak about something much more important than all of that, and it is, of course, the terrible events of what happened in Nottingham to the terribly young two victims of what was then just a night out. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar, killed by Valdo Calacane June of last year. I remember the day, as I'm sure all of you do. It was an awful day. Also died Ian Coates, who was an older gentleman who was just going about his business as well. This week we're told that the government have decided there should be an inquiry into how Valdo Calacane was allowed to do what he did. We've got now Emma Webber, who's Barnaby Webber's mother, to tell us what she's making of it all. Emma, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Mike. Hi, nice to see you.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a terrible story, this. I mean, it must really grate on you to talk about it every single time you have to, but you've done an incredible job of representing your son and as have all the families representing their loved ones as well. Are you satisfied that the government is going to look into this and actually do something, as opposed to just do an inquiry which results in not much change of anything at all?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was our fear. Had we not put ourselves through what I think you've reported, but it's true. We do see it as a form of torture. It's just been relentless. All of the failings and the cover-up and the poor decision making, on and on, endless across all the agencies. So I think the key thing is we heard the word that's been used a lot by the government recently to come into power, certainly of public inquiry. But the difference is that this is a statutory one, so it's judge-led. And statutory is the word we wanted and needed to hear, because that means that those organisations and individuals particularly have to take the stand. They have to give evidence. They're compelled to attend. It's not a choice. Right. So it's really simple. What we want is we want the truth to come out. Yeah. We want to know, and we do want, and we will demand accountability for those gross errors and failures and negligence. But also it has to be a moment where, I'm not going to say, change will happen lightly, but this has to be a moment where it stops, because it actually happened in June 23. So we're actually going to be coming up to 2 years this June, but it's happened since, hasn't it? It's happened.
Well, it has.
Countless times since, and it's not just peculiar to Nottingham. Nottingham wasn't a city that was safe to have Barney. We know that now. But it isn't peculiar to just one mental health trust and one poor police force. In fact, in this case, it's two poor police forces. Yeah. So not a witch hunt, but it is going to be holding those that need to be held to account.
And very possibly, if this inquiry is done properly and people are held to account, and as you say, it's not a witch hunt, you don't want to necessarily punish people, but you want them to admit that they've made mistakes and in some way be sanctioned. I don't know what the sanction would be, but, because there's no other way to make these organisations kind of wake up and realise that it's not good enough to just pass the buck and say, well, he didn't take his medication because, he was frightened of needles, or, we thought he was okay, or, he seemed to be a schizophrenic last week, but this week we thought we could let him out. I mean, all of these decisions which resulted in terrible tragedy, which have ruined people's lives, and you just think you can't just walk away and go, oh, we'll learn some lessons and we hopefully won't let it happen again.
Yeah, I call it the copy and paste. Unreserved apologies and lessons will be learned. That needs to go on the dusty shelf with all the other reports now, because this isn't a one-off. This isn't a one-off terrible tragedy. There are the NHS report that came out last week, the independent investigation into his care or lack of, is one of more than 600 in the last 30 years. That's just NHS homicide through mental health related reviews. And it was a god-awful fight just to get the NHS to, even to correspond with us properly, but to actually make that public. And it's like you said, it isn't naming and shaming in that regard, but it's holding those to account, because it's as simple as, if you don't do your job properly, then you need to suffer the consequences. Right. And it's a lot easier to cope with potentially losing your job, or maybe not getting that promotion, or having disciplinary action against you, than it is to lose your child.
Right. And what's the time frame for all of this? When are you hoping it all gets underway?
Yeah, so that was my question to the Prime Minister. When does it start? How long is it likely to go on for? And is there any chance that this can be U-turned? Those are my three points. No chance it can be U-turned. It's going to be announced formally in Parliament over the next few weeks, and the families will all be present in the gallery that day. I think it's a moment we need to see and hear. It'll start within a matter of weeks once a judge is appointed, and it's expected to conclude within 2 years, which sounds like a long time. But I think if you compare other long, scandalous inquiries like the Post Office, Hillsborough, the blood scandal, these are decades. These poor families have had to wage that war. So, yeah, it's the first time, Mike, that we have been able to slightly lower our shoulders and for the first time trust a little bit in the right thing being done, because those two police forces, that mental health trust, what we already know and what we've already uncovered, there still hasn't been reported about his care, the investigation, the missed opportunities, the lack of responsibility, is terrifying. And also, we believe there's an enormous miscarriage of justice. This individual, Calla Kane, is a patient in a hospital. The statistics prove that he's likely to be out within 20 years. He said he wasn't given the medication he should have been given because he didn't like needles, but he liked other sharp objects, didn't he?
Well, he's ridiculous, isn't it?
He had insight. He was mentally unwell, of course he was, but he had insight. He knew exactly what he was doing. And because of the CPS and because of the criminal justice system, this individual is in a hospital in receipt of income through the state. And if he's getting better, which he already is, as his brothers testified in his Panorama documentary, they've already got him back, then how can they keep him?
Right. And you've also, we've spoken before about this, had examples of people who are killers who were let out. I think it was one particular individual kicked a woman to death who was let out after 2 years because, again, the system is set up in such a way that, you know, these people just want to give people a second chance. And, you know, there are some people I just don't think that should get a second chance. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense. People need to be kept safe in this country.
Yeah, like I said, we took our son to a city that wasn't safe to have him because there were public agencies who weren't doing the jobs properly. It was a case of who it was going to be, not when. I mean, it was unfortunately my son and Grace and Ian, but it's at such a level in this country. I think that we had an opportunity to see the new mental health bill that was being proposed for Parliament, and there's an awful lot of conversation about patient liberty and patient choice and increasing that and reducing the amount of people being sectioned. And I'm all for patient liberty and making your own choices. But if you are dangerous and if you are unwell and you pose a risk to others as well as yourself, then that has to be managed properly. You must not let this happen again in this country.
No, of course not. And what sense did you get from the Prime Minister as to, you know, how genuinely he understands how bad this situation is and how bad the system is?
Yeah, it felt like a human conversation in that room. We had our son Charlie with us, and he said, "Mum, it feels like a war cabinet meeting," because he's studying A-level history. And I said, "Charlie, I hope it doesn't end up being that." But we did have the Home Secretary, the Health Secretary, the Attorney General, the Justice Minister, and the Victims Minister there. So it was a pretty heavy-hitting group of people. But it was a human conversation. Yeah. They do understand the gravity of it. But the crucial thing is that they're all aware is that we were in that room this week because of the unholy fuss and noise that we've made, and we've made since this happened pretty much, but particularly since the sentencing just over a year ago. So without all of that and without everything we've had to go through and the fight, I know almost without any doubt that we would be another swept under the carpet, another tragedy that happened, 18 months ago. We would just be the Nottingham families, whereas, let's be positive and let's, make as much noise as we need to get that change.
Totally. Well, I mean, I take my hat off to you. I can't imagine I've got a son the same age as Barnaby, and it just doesn't bear thinking about,
No.
Sorry. Listen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Emma Webber, Barnaby Webber's mother, there, talking about what happened to her son, which is so awful. You can't even begin to think about it.